welcome to the official Wrestling News 365 YouTube channel. Thank you very, very much for joining us here today. This is your AEW Dynamite review for the November 2019 edition of AEW Dynamite. This week, AEW Dynamite emanated from Indianapolis, Indiana, in the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, easy for me to say, for yet another live episode on TNT. So, to give a bit of structure to the show, every good show needs good structure. Try and say that when you're drunk. We'll break down every segment of the show. I'll give you my thoughts on tonight's proceedings. But what did you, our great followers, all think of tonight's episode? At the end of every episode of AEW Dynamite, we send out a Twitter post on our official Twitter account at 365Wrestle. That's at 365Wrestle. Asking all of our followers to describe AEW Dynamite in 3 words. At the end of our reviews, we take a look at some of the responses and I pick out some of my favourites, both the positive and the negative, and we check out your opinions on the show. So make sure you respond to that tweet every time it goes out, every single week for every single show, and see if you've made the list, as Chris Jericho would say. Now, onto the show. Show opens with good old JR, Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone and Excalibur, your AEW Dynamite commentary team, running down the card for the show. They also explain that Matt Jackson is out of action due to Santana and Ortiz's attack last week when they powerbombed him through the stage, through a partial sort of cardboard bit of the stage, I would say. Anyway, that sets us up for our first match, which is Nick Jackson of the Young Bucks versus Rey Fénix. The commentary team did a really good job here of explaining that Nick Jackson's last single match was actually on June 7, 2015, and he hasn't wrestled in singles action for the last 202 matches. I thought that was a great commentary line. They also say that Rey Fénix's last singles match was only 23 days ago, so that's some really nice statistical analysis that you don't usually see, or we tend not to see nowadays on professional wrestling programming. It gives that sports-centric feel. I'm sure SmackDown and Fox executives are looking at that saying, why can't we do that? Instead, we have someone coming out in a dog costume, bowing down to a king. They also mentioned that the Lucha Brothers are the number 1 ranked tag team in AEW. I really enjoy these rankings. Like I said, it gives you that more sports-centric feel than you see on SmackDown, which is on a predominantly sports-based, or meant to be on a sports-based network. A hot crowd, as usual, for AEW, no different here in Indianapolis. We start off the match. Rey Fénix gets a nice drop kick. He goes for a 619, but Nick moonsaults off the apron. Nice opening trading spots, showing their familiarity with each other's movesets. Just as the match went on, the more I just this thought kept reoccurring back to me over and over again. I've been saying it for a while now, but Rey Fénix is just, he is phenomenal. In my opinion, I think he's a future world champion without a doubt. I believe he's like 23 or something like that, around that age. So he has, so many years ahead of him. And he's already this good, which is, frightening. His balance on the ropes, his fluidity between moves and spots, and his moveset it's great. We'll get into it as we go through the match. Nick goes for an Escalera, but misses on the outside. Rey Fénix encounters into a rolling cutter on the outside to This Is Awesome chants from the crowd. Fénix then hits a Senton Atomico for a 2 count. Fénix goes for the tightrope walk but misses, which itself is just, an amazing move. You think of the balance and how quickly he does it, not only to walk the rope in terms of the balance of the rope, but then to temporarily be on one leg as he kicks the opponent in the face or the shoulder or whatever he does. It's a feat of great athleticism, without a doubt. The commentators also did a really good job of playing up Nick Jackson's hesitations for pinfalls and going for certain spots where he might, in other cases, be looking for a tag, or his instincts would lend him to go for a tag, having tag team instincts as opposed to having singles instincts. Which was they told a nice story through the match through that point, at least the commentators did anyway. I don't know if that was their intention. Maybe they were just covering up some mistakes in the ring. We're talking some crazy moves here. Nick hit a beautiful springboard Hurricane Runner, bouncing off the top ropes to Rey Fenix, similar as Rey Fenix would do for a near fall. Both men trade kicks and strikes. Even Rey Fenix hits a couple of super kicks of his own. Phoenix then hits a version of the tightrope walk into a Hurricane Runner off the apron to the outside. I kept thinking during this match that any spot potentially could be a finish. And I think the crowd almost thought that too. Phoenix then hits another roll-through cutter in the middle of the ring for a near fall. At this point on commentary, they start to hype up the Bash at the Beach event announced for next year's January in Miami. JR says we will see the annual Tony Schiavone Speedo contest. Yes, the well-known Tony Schiavone Speedo contest. Obviously, I know it's a joke, it was in jest, but legitimately, I was thinking this actually could have been a thing in WCW during the 2000s with Vince Russo as head writer. You can hear the pitch in your head, can't you? It will bring in ratings, bro. Tony's bulge equals ratings, bro. There'll be signs at the show, Tony's bulge on a pole. Come on, ratings, bro. I know my Russo impression does suck, I know, but you get my point. This could have actually been a thing. Anyway, moving swiftly on, Nick Jackson hits a delayed German suplex onto the ring apron for another great spot, followed by a facebuster, which he absolutely spikes Rey Fenix. Nick then hits the Canadian Destroyer from the outside of the ring to the inside, but it's not the finish. That will be a recurring theme here, not the finish. I think that's the AEW problem so far, isn't it? Nick then goes for the tombstone, or his part of the Meltzer driver, which Phoenix then rolls into a small package. Phoenix then hits the Mexican Muscle Buster for the victory. The MMB, they're calling. After the match, Nick then offers a handshake, but Rey Fenix turns his back and walks away. In terms of a match, it was a tremendous match. It was great action. Some of the spots, like I said, it's just the athleticism, the type of athlete that both, obviously, Nick and Matt Jackson are, and both the Lucha Brothers are, but even in singles matches, just wow. Those spots were unbelievable. They were so athletic and so crazy. It totally lacks psychology. It's more of a performance than a professional wrestling match, but that's what you come to expect from a Young Bucks match, isn't it? Not totally my thing, not totally to my preference, because I enjoy more of these sort of storytelling and psychology elements to a match. However, you can't not respect the athleticism, and the crowd obviously loves it, and the spots are great. I'm not saying I hate those kind of matches, it's just not totally to my taste, but professional wrestling is all about taste and all about people's preferences. That's not a bad thing, it's not a criticism at all. And the crowd loves it. It's an AEW crowd, the AEW crowd loves it. They are catering to their audience, so no real complaints from me. Hell of an opener for sure. Next, we have a women's division match. We have Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, facing Hikaru Shida. The announcers talk about this being the number one ranked competitor in the women's division, that being Britt Baker, against the number two competitor in Hikaru Shida. For me, this is going off on a bit of a tangent here, but this is where I think AEW really falls short of NXT and WWE in a broader stroke, in my opinion. Their women's division just isn't anywhere near the caliber of NXT. It's not even neck and neck. It's nowhere near for me. They've been positioning Britt Baker to be a bigger star in AEW, along with the likes of Rio, obviously as the women's world champion. But Britt Baker, she just hasn't done it for me yet. Her matches have been meh, if that's a right comparison or a right analysis of it. Meh, just okay. At best for me. The crowd some weeks are into her. Obviously, when they were in Pittsburgh in her hometown, they're obviously going to be into her, and some crowds have been into her. But then the matches happen, and again, it just feels like something would appear to be missing, like something just, that spark of whatever just doesn't appear to be there for me. And on the flip side, especially in comparison to NXT, I know people say it's not a war and there's no comparison, blah, 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 but you're always going to get comparisons in professional wrestling. That's just the nature of the beast, especially when you're on the same day as each other. People might not call it a war, But you saw how loaded the NXT show was last night, and you tell me it's not a bore. So yeah, on the flip side, you have the NXT Women's Division in a War Games match this Saturday, having ladder matches on the show last week, and then probably main eventing the pay-per-view on Saturday, and deservedly so, which is all you need to know, really, in the comparison between AEW and NXT's Women's Division. She's a dentist, chants from the crowd here. Nothing gets past the great Indianapolis folks. Baker attempts to go for a lockjaw finish, but doesn't right get it in. She then hits sort of a twisting suplex for a near fall. Britt Baker also appeared to be caught by Hikaru Shida at some point. I'm not really sure where, but she had a bloodied nose. Hikaru Shida then hits a rising knee with Baker draped over the top turnbuckle. Hikaru Shida taunts the crowd to use the chair. She's sort of implying she may use the chair. The commentators put over that she's only using it for the launch pad, though. It's only for a launch pad, which Hikaru Shida does use as a launch pad to use to hit a rising knee to Britt Baker on the outside. Not sure how I feel about that. Isn't any weapon, regardless of how you actually use it, a disqualification? Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. Britt Baker then hits a sling blade and an awkward pump handle facebuster with quite a sloppy cover that the announced trio had to sort of comment on, as it was that obvious. So like, oh, she didn't fully get her shoulders to the mat. You know, the commentators are trying to do you a favour there, Britt. Baker then hits a nice pendulum DDT on with Hikaru Shida draped over the second rope. Hikaru then hits another rising knee. Forget a super kick party, it's a rising knee party in this match. Then Shida hits a really stiff running knee right to the face. She's already got a bloody nose. She certainly had one afterwards. However, when Shida gets the cover, Baker then reverses into a close and really close to get the lockjaw submission. She just didn't get the mandible claw element to it on there, but Shida gets to the ropes. Britt then hits a twisted neck breaker for a close near fall. Shida then uses a thumb to the eye and a small package for a 2 count. And then that was followed by a Falcon Arrow. I think the crowd was ready for that to be the finish at that point. They seemed really into it, but then obviously the near fall. Then another knee strike for the surprise victory for the number 2 contender. So it would appear that Shida may be the next contender for Rio's World Championship, a rematch from All Out. Again, like I said previously, the crowd was quiet during this one. There hasn't been enough, not necessarily quality, but just star power for the audience to really connect to the women's division of AEW yet. So the crowd, and I would assume there are some people at home that are slightly indifferent to them. However, it's not completely the audience's fault, and either the woman's fault at that point, because we only tend to see one women's match a week on Dynamite. Perhaps if we saw more matches, we might see a greater emotional investment from the crowd. That's just something we're not seeing at this point. That being said, I thought the ending sequence, particularly the last 2 or 1 minutes of the match, were particularly good. Lots of close and believable near falls. But again, you have the AEW problem. I touched on this earlier, where they hit a big move. It's a really big spot. The crowd pops and they're ready to see the victory. The crowd are. And then it's just a near fall. And then they do it too many times. It happens maybe once, twice, or maybe 3 times, to the point of when we do get the finish and the 3 count, the crowd almost isn't ready for it because they've seen a million near falls at this point and there's no pop. And it just feels a bit flat. And I think that's been a recurring thing. It's happened in quite a lot of AEW matches so far. But like I said, I thought it was okay. The last 2 minutes were better, put it that way. Next, we have a video package for the Dark Order. We see a nerdy, larger man in a subway station, it would appear, or a train station, a tube station, whatever you want to call it. He gets his glasses stood on by some bullies or thugs or whatever. He then gets on the train and a video starts playing on the wall. He starts looking around. Is it just playing to me? The video talks about joining us, finding strength. They'll be his friend, his biggest supporters. Talks about being part of the exclusive club they've always wanted to be part of. Stop living in the chaos and bring order to your life. Join us, join the Dark Order. So I would assume that they're sort of trying to shift the Dark Order character or characters to be more like a cult. They shot it in the sort of religious or halfway religious cult styles of those videos you see on like YouTube or you see on the internet or you see people make documentaries about. It's an interesting take on it for sure, and I'm interested in it. If anyone knows or have seen my posts on social media, I'm not the biggest Dark Order fan. I found so far their gimmick to be quite meh, quite dull, quite boring. However, if they go this route, it might be interesting. The only thing I would say is the video contrasting to what the Dark Order truly is in the ring and their outfits and their gimmick. The contrast in styles between this video and their outfits was quite large. So I don't know if they're going to change that or if we'll see more of these videotapes, but I'm interested. I'm interested to see where they go because I know especially regardless of if it's real or not, you have to be careful with those kind of videos about cult-like scenarios. TNT, TBS. You talk about standards and practices back in the day with WCW. I'm not sure how standards and practices would feel about a mocking, or a kayfabe cult. That's a name. Put that on a t-shirt. Kayfabe cult. Being on their program. I mean, famously, they removed the character Seven from WCW due to the sort of child exploitation element of it, or seemingly element, the child predator part of it. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Next, we have the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal with participants Hangman Adam Page, Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, Kip Sabian with Penelope Ford, Jimmy Havoc, Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt, Pentagon Jr., Sonny Kiss, Joey Janela, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, that's right, MJF, and Billy Gunn, who came out for a nice pop. Billy Gunn actually did appear at Double or Nothing earlier this year in the Casino Battle Royal, I believe. So this is his second AEW appearance. Billy Gunn is also obviously a coach / producer / agent, whatever you want to call him, backstage. So he's been with AEW since the start. It would appear that Rey Fenix then comes out to support his brother, gives him a handshake. However, they remove the mask to reveal Christopher Daniels, who distracts Pentagon Jr. to be eliminated by Chuck Taylor. So once again, Christopher Daniels has dressed up as one of the Lucha Brothers to distract and attack Pentagon Jr. So it would appear that at some point we're going to have a match between those two, or a feud between those two. MJF then throws out Sonny Kiss to big heel heat, drawing the ire of Billy Gunn, who is an ass man, of course. He's an ass man. Billy Gunn eliminates Jimmy Havoc and then Marco Stunt. Jimmy Havoc then comes back in with a staple gun, stapling everyone in sight, stapling heads, hands, even balls. In the case of Billy Gunn and Joey Janela, I'm assuming there isn't actually staples in the staple gun, as the competitors tended just to sort of shrug them off after a few minutes of selling. I'm not sure that Billy Gunn wants to have his balls stapled on a Wednesday night. Not a great way to spend a Wednesday night, as they would say. Joey Janela then goes up to the top rope, but Sean Spears would appear through the crowd and hits Janela with a chair, causing Janela to be eliminated. It would appear that their feud obviously is not over just as yet, and we will see yet another Sean Spears-Joey Janela match, which is good. I enjoyed their match at Full Gear. I thought it was different. It gives them something both to do. Lord knows that Sean Spears probably needs a victory, considering so far his win-loss ratio in AEW. The commentators put over the ring and say it's almost 8 carats, over $43,000 apparently the cost. I hear that Impact Wrestling then asked if they could compete, as the ring would be able to fund a year's worth of their TV tapings and actually afford them to buy a phone to stream their shows on Twitch without having to use Josh Matthews' phone. We then see Orange, the traditional, if actually it's anything but traditional, isn't it? I don't know why I said traditional there. We see the Orange Cassidy spot. Hands in the pockets. Cassidy does his Cassidy kicks. I don't know if they're called that, but we'll call them Cassidy kicks here. The Cassidy kicks to Billy Gunn. But MJF takes advantage and throws Orange Cassidy over the top rope for huge heel heat. That's how you get heat in AEW. You throw Orange Cassidy out. MJF and Billy Gunn then have a face-off. Billy Gunn hits the Famouser. Just a side note as well, you realise how big Billy Gunn is in this matchup. He's like 6'5", he's like 270 or something like that. He's a big guy. And during the Attitude Era, I wouldn't say he was one of the biggest guys, was he? He looked like, the Dolph Ziggler, the great bumper, great in-ring worker. But you see him against the 2019 version of a professional wrestler, you realise how big those guys legitimately were. Billy Gunn, after hitting the famous, goes to throw out MJF, but MJF hangs on. We then see Wardlow make his way down the ramp, MJF's new heavy. Hangman then hits the buckshot lariat on Billy Gunn and then throws him out, which I thought was strange, as you would think MJF would be the right guy to throw Billy Gunn out, considering the pops he was getting, whereas when Hangman actually threw him out, he actually got heat for that. I guess you could say, Hangman gets the rub of throwing out Billy Gunn, a legend, but it seems strange to me that they would have Hangman throw him out. Either way, Kip Sabian then eliminates Chuck Taylor with the help of Penelope Ford. Jungle Boy, however, then eliminates Kip Sabian with a beautiful Hurricane Runner elimination. The commentary team say that's your final two, so next week it's Jungle Boy versus Hangman, however, not just yet. The classic Battle Royal swerve is still upon us as MJF pulls Jungle Boy off the apron. MJF had never been eliminated. He was hiding under the ring. So that's your real final two. Hangman Adam Page versus MJF next week for the Dynamite Dozen ring. It should be an absolute great match next week between MJF and Hangman. They actually teased a feud between them early on in the year when they were just having their pay-per-views at Double or Nothing. They had the confrontation with the whole Bret Hart title presentation or unveiling. So it'll be nice to pay that off and actually see MJF in the ring. We haven't seen him that often since Dynamite has started. I thought it was a fine match. It just could have done with more build, really. When they announced it last week, it just sort of came out of nowhere, and it doesn't really mean anything. Talking about how prestigious it is and how nice the ring is and how much it's worth, that's great, but there's been no build. It's cold. It doesn't mean anything, really. Unless this leads to the creation of a TV championship, or, I wouldn't want to call it mid-card, because Cody Rhodes doesn't like that, but a mid-card title. But if this is the mid-card title, if the ring is a mid-card title, then I'm not a fan of that. You need to have a bout, of course. But we'll see. We'll see. I thought it was an okay match. Like I said, the issue is there's no build. There was no build to it. So if there was build to it, if they built to it for a few weeks, if they'd have had maybe qualifying matches to get in the Battle Royal, that's how you build up the hype for something like that and how prestigious the prize is at the end of it. We then see Le Champion, Chris Jericho, backstage, making his way to the ring. He finds a hard hat sitting on a box and puts it on the librarian Peter Avalon. He then says, "Nice robe, moron." It's totally true. He then sees a box that says Indie Fuel. He says it sounds like a jobber tag team. He then sees Marco Stunt. He says, "You should put your shirt on, kid, or you could get sick." He questioned Marco Stunt's real age and requests to see some ID. I believe, however, this was only on Fight TV. I saw the Fight TV feed of the show. If you can, go out your way to find it. Jericho off the cuff is fantastic and hilariously entertaining. This leads us on to our Chris Jericho promo back on TNT. They recapped last week's Scorpio Sky getting the shock pinfall on Chris Jericho. Out comes Le Champion himself with his Inner Circle brethren, Jake Hager. He has a huge announcement to make. They've been teasing it for several days. Chris Jericho has a huge announcement to make. He talks about his temper tantrum last week. He says he was fined for this and had to pay for everything. He says he wants to apologize. He says he sincerely... Try again. He says he sincerely... He's very, very... He then hands the microphone to Jake Hager, who says he's sorry. And just to show how, hands the microphone again to Jake Hager, sorry he is. Hager says sorry every time instead of Chris Jericho. It's excellent. Just those little subtle hints of Jericho being such a heel and being such a pompous ass, he can't say the word sorry himself. He has to get someone else to apologize for him. It's excellent. He says next week in Chicago, he will get the thank you he rightfully deserves from everyone in AEW. Next week, it's going to be Chris Jericho's Thanksgiving thank you celebration for Le Champion next Wednesday on AEW Dynamite. funds, games, prizes, and an aquarium, and maybe even a clown. Who knows? Le Champion is says a thank you is due, and it will be a good night. He then, shockingly, even though they showed the replay before about him losing last week, who could he get interrupted by? I wonder who. He's interrupted by SCU. Didn't mean that to rhyme, it just does. Scorpio Sky then calls Jericho a paragon of virtue. He talks about why Chris Jericho threw his temper tantrum last week. He said he pinned Chris Jericho and gave him his first AEW loss, that blotch on his record. This is followed by "You got pinned" chants from the crowd. Scorpio Sky says he's partied all week since his victory. He said his DMs blew up, and even his high school crush, Melanie Parsons, called him, and they're going out next week now. So Scorpio Sky scored the 3 S's due to his victory last week. But he said he never, ever meant to embarrass Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho said he's not embarrassed. And secondly, Melanie Parsons, he's seen her, and she's gained a lot of weight since high school, which was a tremendous line. It got a big reaction for the crowd. Jericho off the cuff. I don't know how much that was planned in advance, but Jericho on the mic is absolute fire. Scorpio Sky, though, off the cuff, responds that he likes big butts and he cannot lie, which again gets a huge pop from the crowd. Jericho says he thinks he's cuter than Baby Yoda, that Scorpio Sky is happy with his victory. But Jericho then says they're going to have a one-on-one match and he'll wipe the arena with Scorpio Sky. Christopher Daniels then chimes in and says that they need a month, maybe 2 months to prepare, make a fight camp for Scorpio Sky's match with Chris Jericho. Jericho says no, they'll have the match next week to top off the Thanksgiving thank you celebration. Then SCU says, oh no, it couldn't be for the title. No, not at all. Chris Jericho defend the title against Scorpio Sky. No, Scorpio Sky says he doesn't deserve it, in a joking manner, to sort of tease Chris Jericho to put the championship on the line. And it works. Chris Jericho says, you want a title match? Guess what? You got it. And he's talked Chris Jericho into it. Next week, live in Chicago, there's going to be an AEW World Championship match, Chris Jericho versus Scorpio Sky. It's official. Chris Jericho shakes Scorpio Sky's hand, but Scorpio Sky pulls him face to face. Scorpio Sky talks about waiting 15 years for an opportunity like this. And next week he's going to turn Le Champion into Le Bitch. They then cause a brawl between SCU and Jericho and Hager. However, Ortiz and Santana and Sammy Guevara then come out to move the odds in favor of the Inner Circle. Ortiz and Santana then handcuff Daniels and Kazarian to the ropes. Jim Ross then said a line of they've had their hands in handcuffs several times, which was a bit close to the collar there, Jim. Maybe you need to calm down on that one. Michael Nakazawa and Brandon Cutler come out, but immediately get beaten down by the Inner Circle. They then set up Scorpio Sky, who is then hit with the Judas effect by Chris Jericho. Out comes the Jurassic Express to make a save. First Marco Stunt, who gets completely wiped out by Chris Jericho, followed by Jungle Boy, who also gets knocked down by Jericho. However, Luchasaurus then backs him up. It was like opening one of them Russian dolls. Luchasaurus comes out. Jericho backs off, leaving Jake Hager and Luchasaurus to stare off. Hager then takes off his watch, throws it into the crowd, which I thought was ballsy. I mean, you never know how much that's cost. Apparently Hager's got that sweet Bellator money to spare. But then Jake Hager backs off. So this should be a fun match to see later on down the line. Luchasaurus versus Jake Hager. I'm interested in that. I'm actually interested in Jake Hager in the ring. We haven't seen him in the ring since he moved to AEW. This was a fun segment, setting up next week's show. I'm sure Scorpio Sky and Jericho will have a great match as long as AEW doesn't have any timing issues and they get them right and gives them time. This match. Luchasaurus versus Hager, as I mentioned, is an interesting feud. The only thing I would say about it is that both men really need to be protected this early into their AEW run, and neither man really needs a defeat at this point. If you're building up Luchasaurus as this big babyface monster, he has to win, and win. Whereas Jake Hager, how much of a backup is he to Chris Jericho if he loses his first match? However, perhaps when they do eventually face off, a victory is all about elevating Luchasaurus to a future match with Chris Jericho. I think he is that talented. I think he is a future champion for AEW, in my opinion. People can say what they want about the Luchasaurus character, or it's goofy, it's stupid. Well, I think the kids love it, and it's going to sell a shit ton of merchandise. Money talks in any company, not just WWE, AEW as well. If Luchasaurus can sell a shit ton of money, the crowd love him. Every time he comes out, they chant Luchasaurus. So I think he's going to be an AEW World Champion in the future. Not for a while, obviously. Chris Jericho's got that bout on lockdown, and there are other people that I think are more deserving or have a better chance at getting it. Put it that way. We'll go into that as we get on through this review. But Luchasaurus he's money. He really is. Speaking of which, next up is Luchasaurus versus the librarian Peter Avalon. Avalon says he's going to turn Luchasaurus into motor oil, you old fossil. Bit of an oxymoron there. Fossil and old's the same thing, either way. Luchasaurus flattens Avalon with sort of a tombstone flat-out slam for a quick victory in all of 10 seconds. So there you go. Luchasaurus is officially back. Next we have Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz versus Private Party. This match was a tribute to Matt Travis, who was tragically killed 2 weeks ago in a hit-and-run incident in New York City when he was cycling home. Both teams have competed in the New York promotion, HOG, House of Glory, with Matt Travis. Both Santana and Ortiz convincing Travis to go to the wrestling school, getting him off the streets and become a professional wrestler. Travis would also have a part in training Private Party. So this match was a nice tribute to him. Obviously, our thoughts here at Wrestle News 365 are obviously with Matt's family and friends at this time also. So, on to the match. There was an avalanche Russian leg sweep by Santana, followed by a German suplex into a bridge for a 2 count. They then did this really nice spot where it was a stalling suplex or a delayed vertical suplex, whatever you want to call it, by Santana, who held Mark Quinn in the air. He then went over to Ortiz, still holding Quinn, tagged in Ortiz, who then maintains the stalling vertical suplex, followed by another tag to Santana to maintain it, followed by another to maintain it. To maintain the suplex, and we eventually did drop Mark Quinn for a 2 count. I loved that spot. I thought it was great. I thought it was really enjoyable and great strength, obviously, from both. Santana and Ortiz aren't the biggest guys, but it was really simple as well. That's why I really liked it. It's simple, holding the guy up in the air, draining the blood from his extremities and getting all the blood to his head. I thought that was great. A great tag team spot, great psychology. Santana and Ortiz then continued to work over Mark Quinn. They'd use their Boston Crab / Camel Clutch combination, but eventually Quinn gets out. Isaiah Cassidy then in with a hot tag, a springboard Cabrera moonsault to Santana on the outside, and then we had the botch. Now you must have seen this, or you may have seen this on social media at this point. Essentially what we had, Isaiah Cassidy does the jumping code red to Ortiz on the inside. Ref counts 1, 2, nearly 3, and he just stops. The ref just stopped. Botch. It would appear, I hate saying to people to blame for things like this. Oh, they're to blame, they're to blame. But it would appear that Santana missed his cue on the outside to pull the referee out the ring. The ref was half dangling his foot under the bottom rope, so Santana was going to pull him out, but Santana didn't. And the thing, so that's obviously that's on Santana, that's his error, but the referee doesn't get away with it because the ref made an error as well. The ref didn't call it. He pulled up his hand, which is the worst thing you can do, in my opinion. I don't know, if that, obviously that wasn't the finish. I know that wasn't the finish, but if someone fucks up, they miss a cue, they don't kick out, tough shit. It's their fault. You kill the referee's integrity, and you kill the integrity of the match. If you just stop, if you don't do the count, you might as well stand up, look in the hard cam and go, oh, this is fake, by the way. This isn't real, which we know, but come on. We still want to be involved. You don't have actors in the middle of the show. If they forget their line, just look in the camera. If it's live and go, oh, they forgot their line. Come on. Talk about taking you out the match and the suspension of disbelief. I mean, I love both tag teams. Don't get me wrong. And I've had interactions with Santana and Ortiz over social media, and they're great. They're great guys, great tag team. I think they're absolute money. And the same with Private Party. These two are both future AEW World Tag Team Champions, without a doubt. But yes, not good. Not good. A botch is a bitch. We then see a pop-up powerbomb into a roundhouse kick onto Isaiah Cassidy from Santana and Ortiz, followed by a pump kick to the face, followed by a hanging cutter by Ortiz for a 2 count. But at this point, the crowd was a lot quieter after the botch. They were... I mean, I thought for this match they were sort of surprisingly quiet anyway. Maybe they were coming down after the Jericho promo or whatever. But they were a lot quieter after the botch. And I think they were just confused and just like, oh, that was bad. Anyway, Santana brings out the blackjack to hit either one of Private Party with. However, the blackjack is stolen by Nick Jackson. Private Party then hit their gin and juice finisher for a big victory. I'm assuming, is this Santana and Ortiz's first tag team loss in AEW? I think it is. I don't think commentary mentioned it at all if it was, but I think it is. If not, you can let me know in the comments below. But with Private Party winning, it begs the point, if Santana missed his cue and the finish was a Private Party win, why wouldn't you just count the shoulders? I mean, it didn't really interact that much with the finish. They could have come up with something else on the fly. You know, that's live TV. If it's meant to happen, it happens. If it's live, it's meant to be. You know, so again, that frustrated me even more, that Private Party were going to get the win because they should have just counted the shoulders then anyway. Anyway, diatribe over. Sammy Guevara comes out and attacks Nick Jackson. However, Dustin Rhodes comes out to make an appearance. He attacks Sammy Guevara and the Inner Circle using his cast of his broken hand, which was caused by the Inner Circle a few weeks ago, using the cast as a weapon, taking homage, shall we say, to Cowboy Bob Orton, that famous cast. The match itself, it was okay. It was clunky at parts, but when the botch happened, the crowd just completely fell flat. It's not reflective at all on the participants of the match, but it certainly hampered it, I thought. And it's certainly all social media was talking about after the match and the show, I think, from an AEW point of view anyway. Next, we have a Kenny Omega little video package here, training with Michael Nakazawa. Even though Nakazawa came out earlier, this must have been shot beforehand, unless he just got back up and decided to go for a training session with Kenny Omega. Maybe. Or maybe he ran all the way to Winnipeg, Canada. Winnipeg? It's good British pronunciation there. Winnipeg, Ontario, Manitoba, Canada. I'll get there eventually. Kenny Omega says he's not a promo guy or a hardcore guy. He's lost who he is and he's lost his marbles. Kenny Omega has lost his marbles. Breaking news. He said he tracked down the cause of this and it was Pac at All Out when Kenny Omega was defeated by Pac at All Out. He says the powers that be have given him the chance at redemption next week against Pac. He then asked Michael Nakazawa to double the weight on the bench. But the joke is that there's hardly any weight on the bench in the first place, and he only asked him to double the weight on one side, which I chuckled at. It's difficult to take these Kenny Omega promos seriously. Is he being serious? Because at the end of it, he finishes with this bizarre bench press joke. I don't know. I chuckled. Maybe that's the point of it. Maybe I'm looking too much into that one. But he's facing Pac next week on Dynamite, which should be a good match. Their match at All Out wasn't the best thing they could have produced. Reports were that their time got cut quite significantly just prior to the match. So if they're actually given time next week, we'll see. But the one thing on Dynamite that you tend not to get is time. They have a very hard and fast rule of getting off the air at 10 o'clock, right at the top of 10 o'clock, which they've struggled with a couple of times. So maybe they open the show next week. Maybe that'll be the thing to open the show with. On to your main event, Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin. Everyone was excited to see this one. We see a special entrance for Darby Allin. He's carried out in a body bag, or crowd surfs through a body bag. He unzips the body bag, skateboard in tow, and then skateboards down the ramp with his body bag in his hand to a big crowd. Darby Allin seems really over the AEW audience. He's another one who I think is a future star in AEW and a future AEW champion. It reminds me of some serious, I mean, you hate to compare someone as unique as Darby Allin to anyone, but if you had to, he has some serious Jeff Hardy vibes for me. He ticks all the boxes. The girls love him. The kids like the face paint. There were quite a few people in the crowd tonight with their face painted like Darby Allin. And the guys think he's cool as shit. So, I mean, that's your demographics right there, all ticked. Next out, we have Jon Moxley. His entrance is awesome. He has that entrance that sort of follows him through the crowd from behind. Different to the way they used to do it with the Shield, because you actually have a mobile cam literally sort of following him from the back. However, the match starts very quickly. Once he jumps over the guardrail, Moxley is completely wiped out with an awesome suicide dive by Darby Allin. It was tremendously shot as well, because you don't see Darby Allin running up to do the dive. Allin just sort of flies into the shot out of nowhere, which was cool to see. But then this is when Jon Moxley starts to dominate. Belly-to-belly suplex from Moxley to Allin on the outside. They get in the ring, and the crowd and the bell rings. Darby goes for a crossbody, but he literally just bounces off Jon Moxley in the same way that you've seen sort of the Rey Mysterio spot when he's facing the likes of the Big Show or the Great Khali, where he just bounces off him, which was funny to see. Moxley then hits a shotgun drop kick. The crowd absolutely loved Jon Moxley. You can see every single week he just sort of, the layers of his confidence in this creative freedom that he has gets peeled back every week, and he's just reinvigorated. You can tell it's reinvigorated him, and the crowd loves it. The crowd completely loves it. Moxley played the role of the sort of bigger, stronger wrestler in this match. Moxley locked in a cloverleaf on Darby Allin, stepped over into an STF submission hold, which was interesting. It was quite nice, actually, just to see Moxley wrestling a normal wrestling match, considering how he's sort of not been pigeonholed, but a lot of his spots so far in AEW have been this sort of crazy, lights out, hardcore guy, which is good, but then eventually you do need to wrestle. You know, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself just to be just the CZW old Jon Moxley, put it that way. Allin then goes for a crossbody to Moxley over the rope, but Moxley didn't get all the way over the ropes, so he sort of got hung up on the top rope, and it would appear that he hurt his lower back, so he didn't get all the way over, which then leads to Darby and Mox brawling on the outside of the ring. There are dueling chants here from Moxley and Darby from the crowd. Both men then on the top rope, and Darby Allin actually stands on Moxley's fingers on the turnbuckle, but then Moxley pushes Darby off of the top rope, who sort of falls backwards and lands on the top rope midway through the ring. It looks quite a nice, painful spot. I think Darby was fine. I'm not sure about Moxley's hand. He was actually saying after the match, he broke my hand, but we'll see. But that did look a painful spot. He had his fingers right bent back when he was standing on them on the top of the turnbuckle. We then get a tope suicida. Yes, Excalibur got his tope suicida quota in tonight from Darby Allin to Moxley on the outside. Darby then brings in the body bag, but gets hit by a hell of a lariat by Jon Moxley. Nigel McGuinness would be proud. Moxley then puts Darby in the body bag in the ring and just sort of stomps all over Darby. JR was not happy with this. He kept saying to the referee, enough is enough, and let him out of the bag, which eventually the referee did. He said enough, unzipped the bag, and let Darby Allin out. Darby then hits a stunner, but Mox then counters straight away into a swinging sidewalk slam. Darby Allin then hits the Yoshi Tonic for a close 2 count in a nice spot. Code red Yoshi Tonic, whatever you want to call it. Then we had a really fun spot. I really like this one. Darby Allin goes for his coffin drop, and you think he's hit it, but Moxley sort of catches Darby on the impact into a grounded rear naked choke, which is a tremendous counter. I'm surprised we haven't seen anyone else do it so far. It was a really fun spot. If anyone had that reverse naked choke as their finish, that would be a tremendous finish to a match. Then we go into the finish of the match. Moxley hits an avalanche paradigm shift from the second rope. He absolutely spiked Darby Allin. Go out of your way to see this spot. I am stunned that Darby Allin is able to walk. He has no crushed vertebrae in his neck. This is brutal. Even Tony Schiavone on commentary said, that's it, he's broken his neck. But it was awesome. I thought it was a tremendous match, really tremendous match. Both men have awesome chemistry together. I'd love to see a long-form feud between the two. I think Moxley will be able to bring that extra promo out of Darby Allin that we maybe haven't seen fully yet. But I think Darby Allin is a complete star. Moxley's reinvigorated. And I was thinking this when I was watching the match. Is there anyone in AEW right now who is hotter than Jon Moxley? I mean, the argument would be maybe only Chris Jericho, but I can't think of anyone with the crowd, with week to week his promos, his matches, the reaction he's getting every week during his matches, during his promo, that is more over and hotter than Jon Moxley. I can't think of it. I think Moxley could and maybe should be the next AEW champion whenever they decide to have it not on Jericho anymore. I'm not saying it's going to be immediate, and I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon, but I think he's the next guy. I really do. So, overall thoughts for the show. I thought this was another great episode of AEW Dynamite. Not their best show. Absolutely not. More of a transition show. Setting up their big Thanksgiving Eve episode in Chicago next week. So we didn't have any, huge, earth-shattering AEW highlight reel moments this week, but sometimes these shows are a necessity to build up to an even bigger show next week. Plus, I don't know if this was their thought process, it's something worth considering. They know that this week they were up against a stacked NXT, heading into TakeOver on Saturday, heading into Survivor Series on Sunday. They knew that NXT were going to have guys from Raw and SmackDown, big name talents on the show. So maybe why waste, big moments you've got planned when you know you're going to be up against stiff competition? People would say, maybe put the best show out there because then you can make sure that the viewers don't go away. The viewers aren't going to go away. I think if there's any week NXT were or are going to beat AEW, it's this week. So maybe AEW know that and they'll go, you know what, we'll take an hour this week. Eventually we're going to lose. We'll take an hour this week. Next week we'll win again. Main event, I thought was great. Moxley seems to be just a different person. And I think he hasn't even hit his peak yet in AEW. I think he's on the rise. I think he's on his ascent to greatness in AEW. For me, he's there was a question that Jim Ross put to him at StarCast when it was in Baltimore, asking him, are you a babyface? Are you a heel? What is your character? And he was hesitant to say, because I think, and you sort of see it on this show, he's a stone cold character. He's not really a babyface, but he's not really a heel. He's a combination of both. And I think he's just what AEW needs. He doesn't come out of either tunnel. He doesn't come out of the babyface entrance. He doesn't come out of the heel entrance because he's not either. He's just Jon Moxley. And I think you're looking at the next guy who's going to be in possession of the big gold AEW belt right there. I really do. The opener was fun. As I mentioned, lacked any real psychology, but that's par for the course when it comes to the Young Bucks. But I think it really showcased Rey Fénix as a single star. And I truly think that's where the big money is for Rey Fénix and AEW. He's an absolute superstar in the making. You see WWE for years, they've been desperate to have that big Latino babyface, that big Latino person that can get the Spanish audience or Spanish-speaking audience, in the likes of Eddie Guerrero, and you think of Rey Mysterio, who's carried that flag with WWE for so many years. And I think AEW have one in Rey Fénix, I really do. We talk about Jon Moxley being a world champion. I even touched on maybe Luchasaurus one day getting the belt. But I would be stunned. You can clip this and throw it back at me in 5 years' time. I would be stunned if Rey Fénix isn't an AEW world champion in the next 5 years. He is that good. The Santana and Ortiz botch was frustrating because it sort of derailed what could have been and maybe what was on its way to being a tremendous match. The Battle Royal, it just didn't do it for me. As a match it was good, but it just seemed cold, and the whole concept seems to have come from nowhere with no build. And when you have something with no build and no investment emotionally from the crowd, the crowd doesn't resonate with the crowd. They don't care, but it doesn't mean anything. That being said, the issue with the concept aside, Hangman vs MJF should be tremendous. I fully expect MJF to win. I mean, we've talked, the buzzword in this review has been future world champion. MJF is certainly that. He certainly fits the bill. A couple of weeks ago on Twitter, I talked about Chris Jericho obviously being the top heel in AEW right now, and that's easy, that's without a doubt. But you have your future top heel in AEW right there, and potentially professional wrestling in MJF. The guy is money, and the guy has it. We talk about that it factor, that intangible. MJF has it. He has heat, but good heat. Not go away, change the channel, but I want to see, and I will pay to see this guy get his ass kicked heat. Not that Baron Corbin, I'm booing this because the writing sucks, the character sucks, and I'm turning the channel off because it sucks. MJF, you hate him, but you want to watch him. And I think people get confused about that kind of heat nowadays. But what did you think of the show? Let us know your thoughts on tonight's episodes in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once we get to that magic number of 1,000, that's 1,000 subscribers, we'll be able to do live reviews of every single show every day of the week and really get you, our great followers, more involved in our reviews. That is our end game, that is our goal, and only you can make it happen. So please make sure you subscribe to this video. Don't forget, you can follow WrestleNews365 on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. Twitter at 365Wrestle, Facebook at WrestleNews365, Instagram at WrestleNews365, Storyfire, what is it? You guessed it, at WrestleNews365. We will be uploading exclusive content to our Storyfire channel every Saturday and Sunday. So be sure to subscribe over there on the Storyfire app and not miss any of the action you won't be able to find anywhere else. You can also visit our website, WrestleNews365.com. That's WrestleNews365.com for all the very latest news, reviews, exclusive series, and much more. You can also support WrestleNews365 by purchasing our merchandise. Visit WN365. That's WN365.com for all our merch and apparel. If you do purchase an item, make sure you post it on social media so we can share it with all of our followers. We really appreciate all your support. Thank you very, very much for watching this review today, listening to it, streaming it, or however you come across this video. We really appreciate it, and we will speak with you again very soon. Soon.